So what does it truly mean to be a good person today? I mean, in this incredibly complex, often kind of overwhelming world,
Yeah.
it's a question that, whether we actually say it out loud or not, it kind of echoes in our minds, doesn't it?
It really
We're
does.
just constantly bombarded with information, with all these conflicting expectations and just this endless stream of choices. It can feel like a real challenge, honestly, to navigate all of it, let alone, steer ourselves towards a life we can genuinely be proud of, a life that feels, well, deeply meaningful.
It's true. The sheer pace of modern life and just the volume of decisions we face every single day, from the really mundane stuff to the, monumental choices, it can easily lead to this sense of just overwhelm.
Totally.
And we often find ourselves focusing just on immediate outcomes maybe, or sticking really strictly to external rules. But the ancient philosophers and later certain theologians, they offered a profoundly different approach, one that looks inward, really, at the very fabric of who we are.
Exactly. And that's pretty much our mission today. We're taking a deep dive into these really rich philosophical and ethical concepts of virtue and character.
Mhm.
And these aren't just, abstract ideas to kind of muse over in some dusty philosophy textbook. They offer a profound practical roadmap for understanding ourselves, for actually building a life of integrity, and ultimately for achieving this deep, abiding state of human flourishing.
Yeah, and for this particular deep dive, we've pulled from some truly foundational texts. I mean, really foundational. We're drawing insights from ancient Greek philosophy, especially the giants like Aristotle and Plato.
Right. The big ones.
Yeah, the big ones. And we're weaving in the robust theological insights of figures like Thomas Aquinas, exploring the practical wisdom offered by the Stoics, and connecting it all to, well, contemporary ethical discussions on integrity and human action. It's a really rich tapestry of thought spanning millennia.
So our mission then is basically to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from these diverse sources. We want to help you understand what virtue is, at its core, how it's actively built and cultivated within you, and why it's not just some nice to have thing, but actually essential for your life.
Absolutely essential.
We'll try to uncover some surprising facts, challenge maybe some common misconceptions, and, well, as always, add just enough personality to keep you hooked. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So to really get to the heart of what virtue means, we kind of need to start by laying some foundational philosophical groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
And that begins with clarifying some terms that honestly often get used interchangeably in our everyday conversations. Ethics, morals, and virtue itself. They're related, sure, but our sources highlight some really important distinctions.
That's a great starting point because, yeah, while they're closely linked, they each have distinct roots and nuanced meanings. The term ethics, for instance, it comes from the Greek word ethos.
Ethos.
Right. And originally, ethos just referred to customs
Right.
or habitual conduct, or simply that, the usages within a community. It was about how people typically behaved. But over time, it evolved to mean one's character, particularly one's moral character, that ingrained pattern of their choices and actions.
And morals, then, on the other hand, that derives from the Latin word mores, which, funnily enough, similarly signifies customs or habits.
Exactly. So you can already see how the linguistic origins of both terms kind of point to this idea of ingrained behavior, societal norms, and the patterned way we conduct ourselves. It's really about what's habitual.
Okay.
Now, if we delve into the nuance a bit, morality typically refers to our principles or standards of behavior.
Yeah.
The rules we follow, the distinction we make between right and wrong or good and bad, often within a given cultural or personal framework. Think of it as the what of our actions. What are we doing?
Okay. The what?
Yeah. Ethics, then, is the deeper philosophical investigation into the nature of the moral ideal or virtue itself. It's the systematic study of moral judgments, the underlying reasons for those distinctions, often accompanied by our moral sentiments, our feelings about it. It asks the why behind the what.
Ah, okay. The why. That makes sense. And here's where it gets, I think, particularly fascinating, especially when we look at how ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle approached virtue. For them, virtue isn't just about being good in some general sense, like, I don't know, being kind or polite. The Greek word for virtue is arete, and it translates more accurately to excellence, which is, well, it's a powerful reframing, isn't it?
It absolutely is a total reframing. Arete refers to the excellence of a thing, its disposition to perform its proper function effectively. So we consider a knife. It's ornate. Its excellence is its sharpness, its ability to cut well. A runner's aright is their speed and endurance. So for a human being, Virtue means performing your proper function excellently. It's about fulfilling your unique human potential, really reaching the peak of what it means to be you.
And Aristotle really hammered this point home, that virtue isn't something you're just born with, like, a natural talent for music or having blue eyes. It's an acquired disposition.
Acquired, yeah.
It's a state of character that you gain through the habitual, repeated performance of duties, through consistent moral effort. It's about consistently controlling and regulating your impulses and instincts through the application of reason. Think of it less like flipping a switch,
Right.
and maybe more like mastering a complex skill.
Exactly. You don't just wake up one day a great pianist. You practice scales, you learn pieces, you endure frustration, and gradually through that consistent effort,
Yeah.
you develop the skill and the muscle memory.
Right.
Virtue is a similar kind of mastery. It's a skill for living well, honed through consistent, intentional moral effort.
So it's not static. It's this profound, dynamic process of self-formation where basically every action contributes to the person you're becoming.
Precisely. Every choice matters in that sense.
So if virtue is about performing your proper function excellently, that obviously raises a huge question. What exactly is that ultimate function? And what's the ultimate aim for human beings? This brings us neatly to Aristotle's teleological ethics. Now, teleological sounds fancy, but it comes from the Greek word telos.
Telos, yeah, meaning end or goal.
Right, so his entire ethical system is focused on an ultimate end, a final purpose.
That's right. Every single action we take, from, brewing a cup of coffee in the morning to pursuing a lifelong career, is aimed at some perceived good. We do X for the sake of Y and Y for the sake of Z and so on.
Right, there's always a reason.
Always a reason. But if you keep asking why are you doing that? Why that? There must logically be one ultimate good, something chosen purely for its own sake, which all other actions ultimately lead towards.
Otherwise, it's just an endless chain.
Exactly. An endless chain without a final purpose, which would make our actions kind of meaningless, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. So for Aristotle, this ultimate end, this final telos, is eudaimonia. Now, you often hear that translated simply as happiness, but it's so much more profound than just like a fleeting feeling of joy, right? Like the sugar rush from a candy bar.
Much more. Eudaimonia is a deep, sustained state of flourishing or completion or well-being. It's the full realization of what it means to be truly human. It's a life lived with purpose, with resilience, with meaningful connections, even when challenges inevitably arise. It's not a mood, it's really a mode of being.
A mode of being, I like that.
And this naturally leads to the fundamental question. What is our unique human function? What distinguishes us as humans from other animals or from plants or even inanimate objects? For Aristotle, the answer is fundamentally our rational powers.
Our ability to think.
Exactly. Our unique capacity to reason, to deliberate, to make conscious, free choices, and importantly, to seek truth.
So if that's our distinguishing trait, then human happiness, eudaimonia, and morality are intimately tied to the excellent exercise of these rational powers. It's about learning to will well-meaning, to direct your desires and intentions towards what is genuinely good, and to reason well, to think clearly and discern the right course of action.
Right.
The virtues, then, they're not just optional extras, are they? Like a nice bonus if you happen to have time for them after everything else in life.
Not at all. Not optional extras. They are the essential tools, the perfected abilities that enable us to live in accordance with our rational nature and actually achieve this flourishing life, this eudaimonia.
Okay.
Think of them as the practical, actionable steps, the carefully maintained pathways on your personal roadmap to truly living well, to becoming the best version of yourself you can be.
A roadmap. I like that metaphor. This whole concept of virtue as excellence and a pathway to flourishing brings us to a really crucial understanding of the integrated self. How our character, our actions, and our grasp of truth are all just profoundly intertwined.
Deeply connected.
Our sources really emphasize that human beings are body-soul unities. This is a really important kind of foundational point for their ethics, isn't it?
It is foundational. It means you can't just neatly separate the actions of your body from the core of yourself. They are deeply, intimately connected.
Okay.
This also implies you can't really separate your public actions from your private actions either. Both leave traces, as the sources put it, on your character. They fundamentally affect who you are becoming.
Traces. That's interesting.
Consider the earlier example from our sources, the one about the physician. The physician who, in their personal conviction, believes contraception is immoral, but prescribes it anyway due to, say, professional pressure.
Right. The dilemma.
Exactly. The sources argue this action affects the physician's character. They are, in a sense, willing what they believe to be an evil, even if it's only under duress. And that choice leaves a discernible trace, a mark, on their moral integrity.
Wow. That's a powerful idea, that every choice, every action is actively shaping you because you are fundamentally the master of your own actions.
That's the core of it. Your will, your reason, and your free judgment are the very source of your self-possession and your self-governance. This freedom to choose, to act, well, it implies a profound and inescapable responsibility for the character you are actively building. It's like a continuous act of self-creation.
Self-creation?
And to define moral character, maybe a bit more precisely, it's described as having these steady, permanent dispositions to do what is right.
Okay, steady disposition.
Yeah. It involves having morally desirable wishes and goals you actually want to do good, and the tendency to respond emotionally in appropriate ways. Not flying off the handle, not being apathetic. It's a holistic alignment, as you said earlier, of your internal state, your desires, your emotions with your external behavior.
Yeah.
It's about being congruent, integrated.
And here's a really critical insight from our sources, I think. Not only do your actions reflect your character, which seems obvious enough,
Right.
but they also change it. Repeated actions, good or bad, they form habits, right? And
Yeah.
these habits effectively sediment into your character.
Sediment, that's a great word for it.
It's like drops of water carving a channel in stone, maybe, or paths being worn in a field over time. This means you are continuously in the process of becoming what you are destined to be, as the philosopher Edith Stein so beautifully put it. It's this constant dynamic process of forming yourself through your choices.
And this also brings us to what we might call the summer does not come in one day principle, or maybe one swallow doesn't make a summer.
Right, that one.
A really significant takeaway here is that a single action, even a bad one, an unjust one, doesn't necessarily define a person as unjust in their totality. Character development is a long-term process. It's cumulative.
Okay, that's reassuring, actually.
It is. It's about the cumulative effect of choices and patterns over time. Imagine someone who, maybe in a moment of panic or fear, tells a lie to avoid immediate trouble. That's a wrong action, yes, absolutely. But it's fundamentally different from someone who systematically and purposefully deceives others for personal gain, building a reputation for dishonesty.
Right, the pattern is different. The intent is different.
Exactly. The former might represent a lapse, maybe a moment of weakness or what Aristotle called incontinence. The latter indicates a deeper cultivated state of character. It's about recognizing patterns and intent and understanding that transformation, whether for good or ill, is a journey, not just a single leap.
Okay, so now that we've laid that essential philosophical groundwork, understanding virtue as excellence, arpility, and a path to flourishing, eudaimonia, let's move on to something really concrete. The 4 cardinal virtues.
Yes, the big 4.
These aren't just, an arbitrary list of good traits that some ancient philosophers brainstormed one afternoon. They're called cardinal for a reason. The Latin word cardo means hinge.
A hinge, yeah. They are indeed the foundational virtues upon which your entire moral life and human happiness really hinge. Think of them as the main axes around which a truly good life turns.
Okay.
They appeared prominently in ancient Greek philosophy, Plato and Aristotle, and then were later integrated into Christian thought by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. So that shows their enduring relevance across different traditions and centuries.
Wow.
And each one provides a kind of general template for the most salient forms of moral activity, giving us categories through which to understand and, importantly, cultivate our character.
And the first of these, and arguably maybe the most important one, is prudence.
Prudence, yes, phronesis in Greek.
Now, today, when we say someone is prudent, we often mean they're cautious, right? Perhaps even a bit timid or risk-averse. We think of being prudent as just being careful, maybe hesitant, often linked to things like financial decisions.
Right, like prudent investing.
Yeah.
But its classical meaning, which comes from the Latin providentia, meaning seeing ahead or sagacity, is far richer, far more active than just caution.
Seeing ahead.
Yeah. In Greek, as I said, it's phronesis, which translates best as practical wisdom or right reason with respect to action. So this immediately raises an important question for us. How does this classical understanding really differ from our modern everyday use? The classical sense is about making wise decisions, actively discerning the right path towards genuine flourishing, not just passively avoiding risk.
That's a key distinction. So prudence itself doesn't perform actions directly, like courage does in facing danger, but it's concerned primarily with knowledge, and it regulates all the other virtues.
Exactly. It's often called the charioteer of the virtues, the auriga virtutum.
The charioteer. guiding the horses.
Precisely. It lights the way and sort of measures the arena for their exercise. Without prudence, courage can easily become recklessness.
Right.
Bravery turns into foolish risk-taking.
Yeah.
Mercy, if not guided by prudence, could sink into weakness, where forgiveness just becomes enabling bad behavior. Generosity could become prodigality, where giving becomes wasteful or even harmful. Prudence is that guiding intelligence that ensures our good intentions actually manifest as genuinely good and effective actions in the real world.
Okay. So to be truly prudent, you need two fundamental types of knowledge, according to our sources. Two types. First, you need universal moral principles, the big picture truths about good and evil, what truly contributes to human flourishing and what detracts from it.
The general rules, yeah.
Yeah. And second, and this seems equally crucial, you need to understand the specific, particular circumstances of a given situation, the nitty-gritty details.
Absolutely crucial. It's not just about rigidly applying a general rule like a robot. It's about thoughtfully appraising the concrete, contingent circumstances, the unique details of this moment, this person, this context, to determine the best course of action right here, right now. It's a blend of universal wisdom and very particular discernment.
And this practical wisdom, this prudence, it involves three distinct steps in its actual act.
3 steps.
First, there's counsel. This is where you inquire about all the available means to achieve your desired good end. It's a process of careful deliberation, gathering information, considering options, basically thinking things through.
Exploring the possibilities. Then comes judgment, where you critically assess those options you've gathered and determine the proper, most effective means from among them. You weigh them up. And finally, and this is key, command, which is the actual application of that judgment, putting the chosen course of action into effect. It's the decisive step where thought translates into real-world action. You have to actually do it.
Right, you can't just think about it. And to truly embody prudence, our sources say you need several integral supporting qualities, like components of prudence.
Yeah, it's not just one simple thing. These include memoria, which is accurate memory, the ability to learn from past experiences, both yours and others, and recall relevant lessons.
Okay, learning from the past.
Then there's docilitas. This is a kind of open-mindedness, a willingness to seek wisdom from others, recognizing you don't know everything, and being genuinely receptive to advice from elders, mentors, good books, even sometimes from people you disagree with.
Humility, almost.
Exactly, a crucial humility. How often do we truly pause and ask for counsel before making a big decision? This is critical for prudence.
That's a good point. And it continues. There's intelligentsia, not just general smarts, but understanding first principles, grasping fundamental truths. Then solertia, which is like shrewdness or quick-wittedness in navigating sudden, unexpected challenges.
Free thinking, yeah. We also need ratio for discursive reasoning, comparing alternatives logically. Prudentia itself, which is foresight, estimating if your actions will actually achieve the goals you intend.
Seeing the consequences.
And circumspection, considering all relevant circumstances surrounding a decision, the context, the people involved, potential side effects. And finally, caution, the ability to foresee and mitigate potential risks or negative outcomes. All these elements feed into making a truly prudent judgment. It's quite complex.
It really is. Which brings us to a crucial question that highlights the depth of prudence. When does something that looks like prudence actually become cunning? Or what the sources call false prudence?
The distinction is vital. True prudence always aims at genuinely good ends, using genuinely good means. Cunning, or false prudence, might appear reasonable, it might employ clever tactics, and even achieve a desired short-term outcome. But it's ultimately aimed at evil or selfish ends, or it uses evil means to achieve even a seemingly good end.
Okay.
This distinction really considers the intent behind the action and the broader moral landscape. Even considering a supernatural good in a Christian understanding, as Aquinas would, is the ultimate aim truly good? Are the means morally acceptable?
This is perfectly illustrated by that powerful example from our sources, the physician's dilemma we touched on earlier.
Yes, let's revisit that.
Consider a physician who, in their personal conviction, maybe their deep moral or religious belief, thinks contraception is morally wrong. Perhaps they see it as intrinsically evil and act against life or natural law.
Okay.
Yet they prescribe it anyway, maybe due to external pressure, perhaps to keep their job in a particular clinic, or to maintain their professional reputation, or simply to fulfill a patient's direct request without causing conflict.
Right. A very real-world pressure. The sources argue this is not true prudence.
Why not? It seems practical, maybe even necessary for the physician's survival in that context.
Well, While it might seem prudent in a narrow, pragmatic sense, prudent for keeping the job or avoiding an awkward conversation, the sources argue that this action deeply affects the physician's character. By acting against their deepest moral judgment, by willing what they genuinely believe is an evil, even for a seemingly practical reason, it leaves that trace we talk about on their moral character. It's a subtle erosion of integrity.
Ah, okay. It damages the inner self.
Precisely. True prudence in this scenario would involve a deeper examination of the impact on their whole self, their integrity. It might involve seeking an alternative path, perhaps referring the patient to another physician who doesn't share their moral objection, or maybe even seeking employment in a setting that aligns with their moral convictions. It means prioritizing moral truth over an apparent immediate good, even if that path is difficult and potentially costly.
It's really about aligning belief and action consistently, even when it demands significant courage.
Wow. Okay, so if prudence is the charioteer guiding our actions, then justice. Justice is the virtue of right relationship. It seems unique among the cardinal virtues because it primarily governs our relationships with others, right? Rather than focusing solely on our personal excellences or self-mastery, it takes us beyond ourselves.
Indeed, it's fundamentally other regarding. Justice is the sustained and constant willingness to give each person what is due to them. It's about fairness, rights, and rightful obligation in our interactions.
Giving what is due.
Yes. And Aristotle actually calls justice a complete virtue, precisely because it's not confined to oneself. It embraces the good of all, individual and social. He even famously said, and this is beautiful, it is more wonderful than either the morning star or evening star.
Well, why?
Because it reaches beyond mere personal good to secure the advantage, the rights, or the flourishing of another person. It's profoundly altruistic, or at least other-focused in its orientation.
Okay. And justice is also about finding a mean or an intermediate state, particularly in distribution. It's often synonymous with equality, aiming to distribute equal shares, or at least shares in proportion to what is deserved. It seeks to balance things out, ensuring a kind of rightful order in interactions and distributions.
That's right. And we can break justice down into different types to understand it better. First, there's legal or general justice. This concerns governing our actions according to the common good of society as a whole.
Okay, the big picture.
Yeah. It's about what makes us good citizens, how our individual actions contribute positively to the welfare of the entire community. While other virtues, like, say, courage or temperance, primarily focus on personal good, legal justice ensures those actions also contribute to community welfare.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Restraining one's sexual appetite through temperance certainly has personal benefits, like avoiding harmful consequences. But it also has implications for the common good, for instance, avoiding actions like fornication or adultery, which are seen as violations of justice because they cause harm to individuals, families, and the social fabric. So temperance serves justice here.
Got it. And for a truly just society, then, the rule of law is absolutely essential.
Indispensable. Well-drafted laws don't just teach us what's right. They command good actions and prohibit wrong ones. They provide a necessary framework that prevents individuals or groups from abusing power for personal interest or from infringing upon the rights of others. Without fair and enforced laws, justice remains merely an ideal, not a reality.
Makes sense.
Then we have particular justice. This directs us more specifically to the good of individual neighbors, colleagues, the people you interact with daily. It's the proximate concern, that one-on-one fairness. Though ultimately, of course, maintaining this individual fairness also preserves community welfare by fostering trust and stability.
Okay. And within particular justice, there are two further distinctions.
Yes, commutative justice and distributive justice.
Okay, commutative first.
Commutative justice deals with mutual dealings, things like buying and selling, contracts, loans, wages. It ensures fair exchange, where the value of a product or service equals what is paid, a kind of arithmetic or quantity equality.
So if you buy a coffee for $3, you pay $3, you get the coffee. Fair trade.
Exactly. Simple, but absolutely foundational to all market interactions and agreements. It's about keeping promises and ensuring fair trades between individuals.
Okay, and distributive. That sounds different.
It is. Distributive justice concerns how collective goods, like resources, honors, opportunities, and also collective responsibilities or burdens, are fairly apportioned within a community. This is based on due proportion, which isn't always about exact equality, but rather proportional fairness.
Proportional.
Meaning it might be distributed according to merit, or need, or contribution, or even social station, depending on the context and the good being distributed.
Yeah.
The classic example given in the text is that flutes should be given to the best flute players.
Why?
Because that's what flutes are for, to be played well, presumably for the enjoyment and benefit of all. It's about giving to each what they deserve or what is most appropriate based on their relevant excellence or their potential contribution to the common good in that specific area. It's about fitness for purpose.
Interesting. Okay. Some philosophers, like the Pythagoreans, apparently linked justice to reciprocity, basically. An eye for an eye, getting back what you give.
Yes, they did. While that simple, strict reciprocity isn't universally applicable, sometimes it's impossible, or even undesirable, to return exactly what was given. Proportional reciprocity is seen as crucial. It's a thread that binds people together.
How so?
Well, our needs and the fact that we need things from each other, goods, services, support this inherent need for exchange is what brings people together in society. And money, interestingly, serves as a kind of conventional substitute for need by making diverse goods and services commensurable, allowing us to compare apples and oranges, so to speak. It facilitates fair exchange in a complex economy, enabling a broad system of give and take based on proportional value.
Right. It makes trade possible on a large scale.
Exactly. And because justice is so deeply rooted in our relations to others, many other virtues are considered annexed to it, meaning they're closely connected or fall under its umbrella. Well, things like religion, which involves offering God due honor and worship, that's seen as a matter of justice, giving God what is due; piety, showing proper respect to parents in one's country; observance, respecting those in positions of dignity; truthfulness, speaking honestly in our interactions; gratitude, acknowledging benefits received from others; even a rightly ordered sense of revenge, or perhaps better termed retribution, responding proportionately to injurious actions, not excessively; liberality, benefiting others by sharing one's goods appropriately; and even friendship, treating others well out of genuine affection and respect. It's a truly comprehensive virtue, you see, touching almost every aspect of our social lives.
It really is. Okay, moving on, we come to temperance, the virtue of self-governance. In its specific sense, temperance seems to be about the moderation of physical pleasures, particularly those associated with eating, drinking, and sex.
That's the core of it, yes. It's about bringing balance and rational order to these powerful natural drives within us, ensuring they serve our overall good rather than mastering us.
And this is a crucial distinction that often gets misunderstood, I think. Temperance doesn't mean eliminating desire or despising pleasure, right? That sounds miserable, frankly.
Exactly right. That would be a form of maybe unhealthy asceticism or even insensitivity to the good things in life. Quite the opposite. True temperance refines how you enjoy bodily pleasures, preventing them from becoming excessive on one hand or deficient and joyless on the other.
Ah, okay. So it's about finding the right amount, the right way.
Precisely. It allows you to subordinate these powerful appetites to reason, so they serve your greater human good, your health, your relationships, your clarity of mind, your overall flourishing, rather than undermining it. It's about proper, measured, rational enjoyment.
And for the Stoics, temperance actually extends beyond just those physical pleasures, doesn't it?
It does. They saw it as applying to the tempering of any emotion, whether it's excessive joy that leads to folly or paralyzing anxiety, consuming fear, overwhelming dread, and especially anger.
Anger, too.
Very much so. They viewed temperance as a kind of craft or skill that you build over time through practice, allowing you to respond appropriately to situations without excess or deficiency, without being swept away by your feelings. It's about regulating your entire inner landscape, achieving a kind of calm, internal equanimity, even amidst external storms.
That sounds incredibly useful and difficult.
Definitely both. And it's suggested in some sources that good temperance can actually precede and reduce the need for constant, grueling self-control.
How so?
Well, if you've cultivated good temperance, your instinctual responses, your desires themselves, will often align more naturally with what is right and reasonable. This makes moral choices less of a constant battle, less of a struggle against yourself.
Ah, so you don't have to fight the urge as much if the urge itself is well-ordered.
Exactly. Consider someone who has truly cultivated temperance around food. They don't constantly have to fight the urge to overeat or eat unhealthily. Their desires are already relatively well-ordered towards what's good for them. The more ingrained a bad habit is, say, an addiction, the more brute self-control is needed to overcome it. Temperance aims to prevent that ingrained bad habit from forming in the first place by shaping your desires from the outset.
So if you manage your desires well initially, you don't have to fight yourself quite so hard later. It almost becomes, well, maybe not effortless, but a more natural inclination.
That's the idea. Becomes more second nature.
Our sources list several subsidiary virtues that fall under temperance. There are the obvious ones, like chastity, sobriety, and abstinence, which relate directly to moderating specific physical pleasures.
Right, those are the classic examples. But surprisingly, temperance also includes virtues like humility.
Humility, how does that fit?
Humility is seen as restraining the immoderate desire for what one cannot achieve, or for honors one doesn't deserve. It's about knowing your limits and not grasping beyond them, tempering ambition, you could say.
Okay, that makes sense.
And meekness, which is about restraining anger, preventing it from boiling over into destructive rage or simmering resentment. Clemency, which is restraining the desire to punish others excessively, tempering justice with mercy. And even studiousness.
Studiousness, as in like studying too much.
Not quite studying too much, but rather restraining the desire to pursue vain curiosities or useless knowledge, basically. Tempering our intellectual appetites, keeping them focused on what truly matters for wisdom and flourishing, rather than just accumulating trivial facts or getting lost in distractions.
Wow. Okay, so temperance has a really broad reach. It's about curbing all sorts of insatiable appetites that can distract us from our true good, whether they're bodily, emotional, or even intellectual appetites.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a disciplined and well-ordered inner life, orienting all our desires towards genuine flourishing.
Okay, our final cardinal virtue is courage, also known as fortitude. This virtue primarily modifies what the texts call the irascible appetite. Now, don't let the term scare you.
Yeah, sounds a bit archaic, but it simply refers to those powerful drives within us that aim at what is difficult. The drive to overcome obstacles, to face down threats, or to endure pain when reason says we should.
Okay, the fighting spirit, maybe.
Sort of, yeah. The part of us that deals with challenges and difficulties. Courage brings reason and proper measure to that powerful inner force. It enables you to face daunting circumstances and endure pain or discomfort when reason dictates that it's the right thing to do for a greater good.
And like the other virtues, courage strikes a vital balance between two extremes.
Exactly. On one side, excessive timidity or cowardice, which paralyzes necessary action in the face of fear. On the other side, excessive boldness, which is recklessness, leading to unnecessary and foolish risks that harm yourself or others.
So it's not about being fearless.
Not at all. The truly courageous person isn't fearless. They would often be irrational or foolish. Instead, they moderate their fear. They feel the fear, acknowledge it, but don't let it control them. They act dauntlessly, despite the fear, for honor's sake, for the sake of the good that needs to be done or protected.
And the sources specifically highlight bravery in the face of death as a key aspect of courage.
Yes, because death is often considered the greatest sensible evil, the ultimate loss of what we can perceive and experience in this life. It takes immense fortitude, immense courage to confront that ultimate threat rationally and nobly when required.
And there's an interesting distinction made about the brave individual's state of mind.
The brave individual is described as being calm beforehand, preparing thoughtfully, assessing the risks rationally. But they are keen in the moment of action, fully present, focused, and decisive when the danger actually arrives. This is unlike the rash person, who might wish for dangers or boast about their bravery beforehand, maybe out of vanity or overconfidence, but then shrinks from them or acts impulsively and poorly when they actually arrive. Rashness, in this sense, can often be a mask for underlying cowardice or just a lack of true inner resolve and preparedness.
Interesting. So the truly brave person is prepared and focused, not just impulsive.
Exactly. And courage, like the others, encompasses several subsidiary virtues that strengthen its core. There's endurance.
Endurance, just sticking with it.
Pretty much. The ability to stand immovable amidst dangers, especially prolonged ones, or those threatening bodily harm or death. It's about perseverance through adversity, not giving up when things get tough.
Okay.
Then there's confidence, which is closely aligned with magnanimity, greatness of soul. It's a strength of hope, often derived from a realistic belief in one's own strength, or the strength of others supporting you, or even, in some frameworks, divine promise. This inner assurance enables you to confront threats without crippling reservation.
A kind of self-belief, but grounded.
Grounded self-belief, yes. It also includes magnificence, which sounds grand.
It does.
It refers to a sense of nobility in one's endeavors, particularly in executing great actions or projects with a greatness of purpose. It's about undertaking significant things well, with commitment and dedication, not being small-minded in important tasks.
Okay, aiming high and following through.
Exactly. And finally, patience and perseverance are crucial aspects of fortitude. They represent the capacity not to be broken by stress, sorrow, or discouragement, especially in the face of demanding long-term efforts where the reward might be far off or uncertain. It's about staying the course, enduring hardship without losing heart.
So we've unpacked each of the cardinal virtues individually. Now we've looked at prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. But it's really crucial to remember, isn't it, that these virtues don't act alone. They aren't separate compartments.
Not at all. They are deeply interconnected. They form a holistic approach to character. They have to work together, supporting and refining one another.
Like how prudence, as you said, is the charioteer. It guides the others.
Exactly. Without prudence, courage might be recklessness. Justice might be applied cruelly or blindly. Temperance might become rigid or joyless.
Yeah.
They work in concert. In fact, many philosophers argue you cannot truly possess one cardinal virtue in its soleness without the others also being present, at least in some developing form, because they rely on each other for their proper manifestation and balance.
Okay, so they're a package deal, in a way.
In a very important way, yes. A unified whole.
And this brings us back to that really powerful idea of self-determination through action. That your actions aren't just some external thing you do separate from you. They are internal to and constitutive of an individual's character.
Right, internal and constitutive, meaning they literally make you who you are.
Which means that you are continuously self-determining through your choices. Every act, every decision you make, big or small, leaves that profound trace on the very person you are becoming. It's this continuous dynamic process of self-creation, moment by moment.
And this raises a really important point for your life, I think. It challenges a very common modern idea, maybe influenced by what's sometimes called Cartesian dualism, this idea that you can neatly separate your mind from your body or your private beliefs from your public actions.
Like you can be one person at work and a totally different person at home.
Exactly. As if your internal thoughts don't really affect your external behavior or vice versa. Our sources strongly argue against this kind of compartmentalization. They say it's simply not really possible to live that way without profound internal contradiction and ultimately damage to your character.
Why not? People seem to try it all the time.
They do try. But the argument is that your actions, whether public or private, spontaneously tend toward assimilation and amalgamation, meaning they weave themselves into the very fabric of who you are. They become part of you. That physician's dilemma, again, even a seemingly practical or hidden compromise in a public act, inevitably affects your internal integrity, changing the will itself over time. You can't perfectly wall off parts of yourself.
So trying to separate what you believe from what you do is seen as a fundamental contradiction of the unity of the moral agent.
Yes, a contradiction in terms, almost. And this, our sources suggest, leads inevitably towards hypocrisy, which they define as simulating a character which is not his own. Basically, living a lie, presenting a false self to the world, or even to yourself.
Okay. So true integrity, then, is about aligning your beliefs and your actions, ensuring your outward behavior consistently reflects your inner conviction. It's about being whole and consistent, being the same person whether you're in public or entirely alone.
That's the ideal of integrity, yes. Being whole, integrated.
This interconnectedness also highlights the absolute imperative of truth and knowledge in character formation. You can't really build good character in a vacuum of ignorance.
Absolutely not. One of the most essential requirements for good moral action is knowledge of the good. As the sources state with really profound clarity, moral behavior is a response to reality and therefore requires a knowledge of reality.
You can't aim for excellence, for errate, if you don't truly understand what that excellence entails for a human being, what reality demands of you.
And this knowledge isn't just subjective, right? It's not something you just decide on your own based on feelings.
No, the classical view is that it's objective. It's found in the careful study of the world, in understanding human beings through disciplines like anthropology, biology, psychology, philosophy, and in seeking truth itself, including moral truth. It's about truly understanding what constitutes genuine human flourishing, what aligns with our rational nature, and what leads us away from it. It's a pursuit of objective moral reality.
Why is this knowledge so vital? Can't people just try to be nice?
Well, being nice is good, but it's not enough for true virtue. This knowledge is vital because everyone, even those who commit terribly immoral actions, ultimately chooses what they believe to be good at that moment. From their limited perspective.
Well, even like a cruel dictator.
From their warped perspective, yes. The thief sees looking cool or buying things as a good, perhaps even a necessary good, for their perceived happiness or status. The physician we discussed who acts against their conscience sees keeping a job or maintaining patient comfort or avoiding conflict as a good they are pursuing.
Okay.
But to know only an apparent good, a good that seems desirable on the surface but ultimately detracts from true long-term flourishing, is to be hampered. It's like living under an illusion. Fuller, correct knowledge of the true good, of reality, is what frees you to act in a truly moral way. Because only then can you distinguish between what merely feels good or seems advantageous in the short term versus what is truly good and beneficial for your entire being and for others.
Knowledge sets you free in a moral sense.
In a very real moral sense, yes. And what's fascinating here, and maybe a bit counterintuitive, is that someone who thinks they are doing the right thing, based on faulty knowledge or reasoning, even when they are actually doing wrong, well, they can be harder to correct than someone who knows they are doing something wrong but struggles with it.
Harder to correct. Why?
Think about it. The person Aristotle called the incontinent person, that's someone who battles their desires. They know the good, they see what's right, but they fall short, perhaps due to weakness of will or strong temptation. They often feel guilty. They recognize they're failing. But the person who sincerely believes their wrong action is right, perhaps because they've rationalized it or have a flawed understanding of the good, they often see no need for correction.
Because they think they have the truth.
Exactly. They think they're already virtuous, making them resistant to alternative reasoning or moral guidance. Their error isn't primarily in the will, like the incontinent person, but in the intellect and their understanding of reality. And correcting faulty understanding can be much harder than strengthening a weak will.
That's sobering. Okay, so given how demanding and continuous this process of cultivating character is, it's clear that virtue is a lifelong effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No one is born with mastery of these virtues. They are demanding, they require constant, deliberate work, self-reflection, and correction.
Which is precisely why philosophy itself, in the classical sense, can be seen as a kind of therapy.
A therapy of the soul, yes. A means of healing our misconceptions, clarifying our understanding of the good, and training our minds and wills to align with truth and reality.
And the Stoics, in particular, they offer some incredibly practical approaches for actually doing this, for cultivating virtue, ancient tools that are remarkably relevant for modern living.
They really do. One excellent example is the practice of the evening journal, or daily self-examination. Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, wrote about asking himself each night, "What bad habit of yours have you cured today? What vice have you checked? In what respect are you better?" It's a very direct, honest, personal audit of your day's moral performance.
Taking moral inventory.
Exactly. And Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Well, that's a profound testament to this very practice. It's literally his personal journal, never intended for publication.
Right, just his private thoughts.
Yeah. And in it, he constantly reflected on how he could be better. He wrestled with struggles like just getting out of bed in the morning when he didn't feel like it, dealing with annoying or incompetent people at court, finding patience in trying circumstances, reminding himself of his duties.
Even the emperor struggled with getting out of bed.
He did. And this shows that even a Roman emperor, someone deeply committed to Stoic philosophy and virtue, struggled daily with these very human challenges, which I think can be both daunting, showing the perpetual effort required, but also incredibly inspiring for you.
How so inspiring?
Because it demonstrates that cultivating virtue isn't some lofty, superhuman ideal reserved for saints or philosophers on mountaintops. It's a deeply human and achievable endeavor, tackled one careful choice, one moment of self-reflection at a time. Even emperors had bad days and had to recommit.
That's actually very encouraging. Okay, so beyond the journal, our sources highlight other ways to actively train yourself morally.
Yes. This includes deliberately placing yourself in situations of moral significance, maybe volunteering in a challenging environment that tests your patience or compassion, or taking on a difficult leadership role that really tests your integrity and justice, or even just consciously navigating the daily ethical dilemmas at work or home, choosing the more virtuous path even when it's harder.
Putting yourself in the game, so to speak.
Exactly. And it also extends to mental exercises, like imagining yourself in morally challenging situations and mentally rehearsing how you would act rightly, pre-committing yourself to the good course of action.
Visualizing virtue.
In a way, yes. Engaging in reflective thinking about moral matters is also crucial, constantly questioning your assumptions, studying the lives of virtuous people, historical or contemporary, and deepening your understanding of truth and the good.
And finally, there's the social aspect.
Hugely important. It's also profoundly helpful to associate with groups or communities that embody the character traits you wish to acquire. We're social creatures, as Aristotle knew well, and our environment profoundly shapes us. Surrounding yourself with virtuous, supportive people can be a powerful catalyst for your own growth. Choose your company wisely.
Good advice. Okay, ultimately, this whole journey into virtue, from ancient Greek philosophy to Stoic practice, it seems to have an even deeper purpose, particularly when we look at the thought of someone like Thomas Aquinas.
Ah, yes, Aquinas. He offered this beautiful and incredibly expansive synthesis, masterfully merging Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia, natural human flourishing, achieved through virtue with Christian theology.
So how did he do that?
Well, Aquinas agreed with Aristotle that we can achieve a significant, true, but ultimately incomplete happiness through cultivating our natural virtues, like the cardinal ones we've discussed. We can become good, functional, flourishing human beings through our own efforts, guided by reason.
Incomplete happiness.
Yes, because for Aquinas, complete happiness, or beatitude, which he understood as a supernatural union with God in the afterlife, lies beyond our purely natural human capacities. It requires something more.
And that something more is?
Divine assistance, grace. Specifically in the form of infused or theological virtues. These are not acquired through habit in the same way the cardinal virtues are. They are understood as gifts directly infused by God. Faith, hope, and charity, or love.
Faith, hope, and charity, the theological virtues.
Correct. And charity in particular is seen as profoundly transformative. Aquinas taught that charity rectifies our fallen wills by reorienting our desires, our appetites, uniformly towards God, who is understood as perfect goodness itself.
Reorienting our desires towards God.
Yes. And importantly, this love for God also necessarily includes the love of neighbor. Why? Because in this theological understanding, your neighbor is the natural image of God, and so loving them is an essential extension and expression of loving God. You can't truly love God, Aquinas would say, without also loving your neighbor.
Okay. This leads to a really profound concept, that charity provides the form of the other virtues. What does that mean, the form?
It's a deep idea. Think of it this way. Prudence guides your choices, justice ensures fairness, temperance masters your desires, and courage fortifies your resolve. They're like incredibly powerful, finely tuned engines, enabling good human action.
Okay, the engines.
But what gives those engines their ultimate direction, their deepest purpose, their fuel, and their final destination? For Aquinas, charity provides that ultimate form or purpose. Charity isn't just another virtue alongside the others. It's the very reason, the ultimate end, for which all the other virtues should be exercised by someone seeking beatitude.
So it elevates them.
It elevates and directs them. It reorients all your actions, your pursuit of wisdom, fairness, self-control, bravery, making them fundamentally about loving God and loving your neighbor for God's sake. It transforms naturally good human action into action ordered towards a supernatural good, giving it an entirely new dimension of meaning, depth, and ultimate purpose.
Wow, that's quite a synthesis.
It is. It's integrating the best of Greek philosophy with Christian revelation.
But this doesn't mean the natural moral virtues, prudence, justice, temperance, courage, become obsolete or unimportant once charity is present.
Oh, not at all. Absolutely not. Even with charity as the guiding form, the moral virtues remain essential. Why? Because they help you curtail sinful inclinations, the tendencies that pull you away from God and neighbor. They make it practically easier to yield to charity's promptings. They refine the very practical means by which you actually live out your love for God and neighbor in concrete actions.
So they're still the necessary groundwork.
They are the indispensable practical tools. They prepare the ground, build the structure, and provide the pathways for charity to operate effectively in your life. They are crucial aids on the journey towards ultimate fulfillment, whether natural or supernatural.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, we've really taken quite a journey, haven't we?
We certainly have.
From that ancient Greek understanding of virtue as excellence, as our ate, and this profound roadmap to flourishing, eudaimonia, then through the very practical Stoic practices of daily self-reflection, and finally into Aquinas' really breathtaking integration of these ideas with a higher spiritual purpose. We've seen how virtues like prudence, justice, temperance, and courage aren't just isolated traits you might tick off on a list, but they're interconnected dynamic forces that literally shape who you are at your very core, ensuring your inner life and your outer actions are ideally aligned.
And the core message, I think, from all these diverse sources, spanning millennia of human thought and experience, is remarkably consistent. Your character is not static. It's not fixed.
It's dynamic.
It's dynamic, constantly being shaped and reshaped by your actions, your choices, your habits, and even your underlying intentions. Cultivating virtue is, without doubt, a demanding endeavor, but it's also a profoundly rewarding one. It's a lifelong process, self-determination and self-formation, a continuous sculpting of the self you truly wish to become.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now in your daily life? If every voluntary action you take truly leaves a trace on your character, as our sources suggest, well, consider how one small conscious choice today, just one, made in alignment with what you understand to be truly good and excellent. How that could be a tiny but powerful ripple.
A small start with big consequences.
And that ripple isn't just a fleeting act, it's actively shaping the future you that you truly aspire to be. So maybe the question to leave you with is this. Which virtue, out of the ones we've discussed today, prudence, justice, temperance, courage, resonates most with you right now? Which one feels like an area for growth? Which one will you focus on strengthening, maybe starting today, even in a small way, to further your own flourishing and deepen your own integrity?